Hi, I'm Spiders, and something very important for your builds is something that I've hardly seen discussed is what exactly you should be running for your traits. Trait allocation is also something that can be somewhat complex and varies a lot from build to build, so let's get into the details on what exactly you should be running right now. Erudition. Erudition is probably the most complex stat and also the stat that you should start with when determining the amount of each trait to invest to. This is because the amount of erudition you run is used as the baseline to determine the amount of trait points you have available to invest into your other traits, so it's important to find the right amount of erudition for you first. The reason you should balance the rest of your trait investments around erudition is because every build, less so Silent Heart / Attunement list, but we'll get into that, needs a certain amount of erudition in order to be able to use your mantras and event, which are two fundamental abilities that you really must have in order to play the game properly on most builds. The other traits simply give you either a damage boost or a health increase, neither of which affect the overall playstyle of your build as a whole nearly as much as erudition, so erudition is what I believe to be the first trait that you should focus on before picking your other traits. Now, as for how much erudition you should run, it's sort of a difficult question to answer, but if you follow a few key guidelines, you should be able to make the right choice for you and your build. Generally, if you're not investing a lot into an attunement, meaning that you're either Silent Heart or attunement list, you can invest on the lower end of erudition, so I'd recommend between 0 to 4. This is because tempo is less important for these builds, since Silent Heart and attunement list builds don't really rely on mantras, and more so on their weapons, so being low in tempo isn't a huge problem. For Silent Heart especially, you could probably get away with running 0 to 2 erudition, since you don't really need to worry about erudition for mantras at all, and it's really just for your ability defense, or auto scream I guess, but we don't talk about that. Next, if you're running a lot of stat points into your attunement, I recommend running at least 3 to 6 erudition, since having access to your mantras is extremely important, since without having access to your mantras, you're practically giving up that 80 or so stat points you invested into your attunement, which, as you would imagine, is something you want to avoid. The last thing you should consider is what weapon you're running. Pretty simply put, the faster the weapon you're running is, the less erudition you need. Now the reasoning for this is that the lighter weapon you have, the easier it is to land hits, and inversely the heavier your weapon is, the harder it is to land hits without mantras. Think about it this way, if you have no tempo and no mantras, and are just bare parry trading with a heavy weapon, what do you think the chances are of you actually breaking through your opponent's defenses and landing a hit? Well, it's safe to say that they are very low. Now, Vitality. Vitality is always a very good stat, and most builds these days run 6 Vitality, so this is pretty much the best stat boosting trait right now compared to Songchant and Proficiency. I'll get more into the specifics when I talk about the numbers for Songchant and Proficiency and how much they actually boost your damage, but you can also logically understand why Vitality is better than Songchant and Proficiency most of the time. Think about it this way, Vitality is always going to be helpful, since more health is always good and will always be beneficial to you. However, Songchant and Proficiency are more situational, since Songchant only applies to mantras and Proficiency only applies to your weapon, so unless you're Silent Heart, neither Songchant nor Proficiency are going to be helpful 100% of the time, while Vitality is always helpful. So thinking about it that way, since Vitality is always helpful and Songchant and Proficiency aren't always helpful but only part of the time, Vitality is just fundamentally better in that way. So that being said, feel free to always run 6 Vitality in every build if you want it to be good. That's pretty much what the meta is these days, and it has been like that for a while. And that's also what I recommend going on pretty much every build too. At this point, you should have your erudition and your vitality picked out, but unless you're going 6 erudition and 6 vitality, you'll probably still have some extra trait points left over. And that leaves you with a choice between Songchant and Proficiency. Now first I'd like to start off with Proficiency, because we actually have clear numbers on how much exactly Proficiency will benefit you. I have a little damage calculator, you've seen it in my other videos, don't be scared. I'll explain everything pretty clearly, and it's very helpful in this demonstration here for showing whether or not you should actually be running Proficiency. So the way that Proficiency works is that you get more damage for your weapon. Everyone knows that, but something very important to know is that it actually depends on your weapon's scaling for how much of a benefit you actually get from Proficiency, and scaling is the main deciding factor for how worth it Proficiency is. For example, here you can see a difference between someone with 6 Proficiency on the Hero Blade of Wind with 100 stat investment. Here's the damage with 6 Proficiency, which is around 31.5, and without 6 Proficiency with 0 Proficiency, it is 28.25. So with 6 Proficiency, this rounds out to about a 1.11 times multiplier for your damage, or about an 11% increase to your damage. And keep in mind, this is with a weapon with a pretty low attribute scaling of 5.5. So now if we switch to an example of a weapon with high weapon scaling, which is here, the Hive Lord Hubris, you can see the damage is here with 61.275 with 6 Proficiency, and only 52.5 without 6 Proficiency, which results in about a 1.17 multiplier for your damage, or about a 17% increase to your damage, compared to the 11% increase with the Hero Blade of Wind. Now either way, that damage bonus is pretty good, but definitely a pretty sizable difference between the Hive Lord Hubris here and the Hero Blade of Wind. And this applies to all weapons with scaling too. So just keep this rule in mind, the more weapon scaling your weapon has, the better Proficiency will be. So it's not really as worth it to run on low weapon scaling weapons, like Hero Blades or other elemental weapons, etc., that kind of thing. But on higher scaling weapons, such as most heavy weapons for example, but it kind of varies depending on which endgame weapon you use, it can be a lot more worth it. Also, it should be noted that since we are talking about weapon scaling, the amount that you invest into your weapon stat does matter quite a bit. So when I was comparing the Hive Lord Hubris and the Hero Blade of Wind, this was at 100 attribute investment. But as you can see, if we reduce this number, the damage multiplier that we get slowly starts to go down all the way back down to 1, which is pretty much 0 benefit from proficiency. So you need to make sure that you invest a lot into your weapon if you're going to be going proficiency, so that you can get the most benefit possible. Also, if you want to check how much of a damage multiplier you'll get on your weapon, I'll have this calculator in the description below. It's pretty simple to use, you can just read all these values here. Now besides proficiency, there's also Songchant. Now Songchant is something that's actually been pretty unknown in the community from what I know, because people don't really know what exactly mantra scaling is, and of course people know what pen is, but mantra scaling is really the weird part here. Since you can't just like hover over a mantra like you can with your weapon to see your weapon scaling, to see the mantra scaling, it's kind of a hidden value. So because of this, you can't really know exactly how much of a benefit and damage you'll be getting from Songchant. There's no way to use a damage calculator like before, since those don't exist right now. However, in my research for this video, I actually did receive some information from a tester about a little bit how that mantra scaling works. Basically, it works pretty similar to weapon scaling, so the more points you have invested into your attunement, the more damage bonus that you'll get from Songchant. Now this is actually a really big deal, because most people would stop at 80 points in their attunement so that they could get level 5 mantras, since nobody really believed there was any benefit to going 100 into your attunement, since most attunements don't have any talents or anything, and there's no extra levels that you can get on your mantras past 80 investment into your attunement. But it turns out that it can actually be worth it to go 100 into your attunement to get more of a damage bonus from Songchant, which is something nobody really knew about before. So I wanted to put that information out there, make sure you remember that, since that is pretty good to know, I'd say, and can actually have an impact on your build. So besides that though, we still don't really have any clear numbers on how Songchant works, so for now we'll just put that aside. And also, Songchant gives you extra pen for your mantras, and Proficiency does give you extra pen for your weapon as well. I didn't forget that, but that's just another thing. So with all that information, it's kind of up to you to decide whether or not you should go in Songchant or Proficiency with the rest of your trait points that you have available. Obviously, if you're going Mage build, you should probably invest in Songchant, or if you're going Style and Hard, definitely go into Proficiency and put none into Songchant. But if you're somewhere in between, you should decide based on whether you rely more on your weapon or more on your mantras. For example, if you're going to Gale Hero Blade build, you should probably go more Songchant than Proficiency, since as mentioned earlier, your weapon has pretty low scaling, so you won't really be getting the full benefit from Proficiency. And with Gale Hero Blade, you most rely on your mantras anyways. Or if you're going something that relies more on your weapon instead, like maybe a dagger or tomb in this build, then you should probably put more points into Proficiency rather than in Songchant, since of course you're using your weapon more, so you'll get more benefit from more damage on your weapon. In the end though, it's up to you though, and it's for your build, so definitely make a choice based on what you think is best. And that should be everything you need to know in order to choose the most optimal traits possible for you and your build. This video was a bit longer than normal, but I do hope and believe that the extra information will be helpful to you. If any more noteworthy information comes up to me about traits in the future, I'll also make sure to pin it in the comments below, so look out for that. Like and subscribe for more top content, and see you in the next one.